following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Hey everybody, we're back on Belly Up Fantasy Live. It was a big weekend in the NFL, the draft, surprises galore, tons of movement up and down the board by teams, a record amount. In fact, we're here to break it all down for you. We're going to talk about our favorite picks from round one, our least favorite picks from round one. We're going to look at day two and who could possibly have a fantasy impact there. And then where are the gems that we can mine out of day three, rounds 4 through 7? Who really nailed this draft, who didn't? All that and more coming up right here on Belly Up Fantasy Live.
Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees, and a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. There's the whistle. It's time to start Belly Up Fantasy Live. How are we all doing this morning? I am Chase Thornton, again, coming to you as always from the Mont and Bailey Basement Bar. Looking forward to talking about some draft outcomes today. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you all. I was thrilled with how things went. I was happy for my team. I didn't come out of this crying about, another quarterback controversy or anything like that in Green Bay. But really excited to see what the rest of the future holds, and looking forward to hitting some dynasty rookie drafts here coming up. With me, as always, we're going to bring in Mr. Kevin Wilson. How we doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great, and I must echo your sentiments for my team, the Seahawks. I think they did extraordinarily well, and I was on the call when they made that number 5 pick, so I was very excited about that. Yep. And so I am very happy about being here because we have lots to talk about and lots to react to. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting into this.
Yeah. So let's just get right into it. No need to beat around the bush. I mean, like you said, there's plenty to talk about, and we can't even do all that in an hour. So let's get her going here. Round one, a lot of movement up and down. I mean, obviously we saw the trade that happened a few months ago to put Carolina up in the number 1 position, but that wasn't the only movement that happened. Obviously we had teams jumping up and down and up and down. And the big surprise, with Houston coming back up to pick number 3, round one, what was your favorite pick? And if you go homer pick, I'm going to make you pick somebody else too, but go ahead.
Okay.
What was your favorite pick?
I won't do it. I have to say my favorite pick came later in the first round, and that is Jordan Addison getting picked, going to the Minnesota Vikings, and he's going to be the number 2 receiver opposite of JJ, and you have to like that. He was the 4th receiver picked, but I think he lands in the best situation out of all of them, as he's going to have plenty of opportunities with single coverage and all that sort of thing. So I think he landed in a perfect spot. And if we're talking fantasy, which this show is of, fantasy, of course, right. I like his prospects as a fantasy wide receiver, the best out of all 4 of them.
I can't disagree with that in terms of my excitement for it. I mean, I'm not excited as a Packer fan to see that because I think that team got a lot better than they were last year. Adam Thielen, obviously longtime Minnesota Viking fan favorite, franchise stalwart. He's one of the legends, probably go in the Ring of Honor someday. And I really respect Adam Thielen as a player. I always
as a
have.
Player, he's a great, a locker room guy and all that.
Yeah,
but he was slowing down, obviously. So it was time for them to get a number 2 wide receiver, and they did exactly that.
He was their number 2 wide receiver, and he literally had less than half the points that Justin Jefferson. Now, nobody had the points that Justin Jefferson had, right? He's all world right now. But Adam Thielen moves on. They allow him to leave. He signs with Carolina, which I actually like. For Bryce Young, but that's another conversation.
Bryce Young at quarterback. I like that.
But Adam Thielen leaves behind at least 107 targets as that number 2, number 3, wide receiver. KJ Osborne, Thielen had 107 targets last year. KJ Osborne had 90 targets last year. So we're talking about 200 targets really that are available between their 2 and 3. And I think for my money, Jordan Addison could be in better than KJ Osborne, enough so that he takes the bulk of those rather than seeing them to KJ
better than him
Osborne.
right now as we speak.
What was that?
I think he's better than him right now as we speak.
And I'm saying, like, maybe he takes a minute to adjust to the league. Who
I'm
knows?
sure it will.
But I agree with you. I love him there from a fit standpoint, and in terms of the direction that they want that offense to be going and what they want to do there.
Yeah.
Having him as a number 2 to Justin Jefferson that's going to be rough on the rest of the NFC North for quite a while coming up here. My pick, and I agree with that one. My pick was another one in that run. We didn't see a receiver go until pick 20.
20, my Seahawks, which I like that a lot too, but he goes into a situation where he's going to be number 3.
Yeah,
so that doesn't shout fantasy relevance at all.
No, not yet. No, not yet. Anyway, but we had that run then of 4 straight wide
Dynasty,
receivers.
we could talk, but redraft, we're not talking that.
So my pick out of that, I liked Zay Flowers at 22.
I consider
going
that
to Baltimore. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Baltimore had by far the worst production, the least production of any wide receiver room in the league last year.
About, Rashawn. No.
Now you can debate. I mean, Devin Duvernay is a
He's a guy.
He's a decent player, but he's just
He's
a guy.
a decent player, but he's not a top of the line receiver.
Most of the guys in this fantasy room, in this wide receiver room, especially for fantasy purposes, are Jags, just a guy, right?
Yeah,
Rashad Bateman gets hurt after only playing in 6 games.
Rashad Bateman, yeah.
So they were missing their top guy. So you kind of have to. There's a caveat to the worst wide receiver production in the league. Plus, they went a quarter of the season essentially without their stud quarterback in Lamar Jackson. So, it was a down year all around for the Baltimore offense, and they still fought through it and actually had, in my opinion, a fairly successful season, all things considered. They made the playoffs.
They made the playoffs.
Right. In a passing league with the worst wide receiver room and a backup quarterback basically for a quarter of the season and in the playoff. They made the playoffs.
And a tight end who didn't show out as we thought he would.
No, not at all.
So hats off to them.
I like Zay Flowers there because I mean, obviously Baltimore didn't rest on their laurels. They didn't have any laurels to rest on from the wide receiver position, but they go out, they grab Odell Beckham, which was a bit of a surprise. But now they've got Rashad Bateman, they've got Odell Beckham. There's been talk that they would try trading for DeAndre Hopkins. Now the Cardinals have kind of shut that down a little bit, saying Monty Ossenfort coming out saying he doesn't think he's going to be trading DeAndre Hopkins. But either way, I mean, it's obvious that they want to upgrade that room, and they go out and they make a big statement right away. Grab Zay Flowers. I think he'll look very good on that offense, with Rashad Bateman, hopefully a fully healthy Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham. I think that you can put Flowers in the slot there, and now you've got weapons on the outside between Bateman and Beckham. You've got weapons on the inside between Flowers in the slot and Mark Andrews at tight end. And you've still got big.
I still like him. So yeah.
Oh, and I agree too. He's still a top 3-4 tight end for me. But you've got J.K. Dobbins in the backfield, who will be another year removed from that injury, from his injury problems. And then, like we've all said, Lamar Jackson signs his extension right before the draft there.
Finally.
And finally. But I mean, this thing all came together for Baltimore, and they look like they could really challenge. They're a lot better
today than they were last Sunday.
Big time. They look like they could really challenge Cincinnati. I think that's going to be fun to watch.
It's
that battle between
division.
Cincinnati and Baltimore.
The Steelers, you got them. You've got the Bengals. Mm-hmm. So, and that's always been a good division. So we're back to watching some good football over there.
Right. I'm really looking forward to that. So I mean, I loved what Houston did.
I like it.
I'm glad they took the
real
quarterback
and a fantasy standpoint.
I'm glad they took the quarterback after we had all this smoke
Right.
screen. And I put on Twitter, I said the smoke screen was just that, smoke screen. They weren't going to
Well,
take quarterback,
like
not
how
going to take the
they,
quarterback.
So they couldn't decide, well, should we take the quarterback or the defensive player? Well, screw it. We'll just take both.
Get them both. Now, I've seen some people who weren't real happy with the idea of how much they gave up to move back up to 3, but they were in position to do that.
You had
that. The Deshaun Watson trade, getting them that extra 1 from Cleveland. Cleveland faltering last year without Deshaun Watson being, the starter, and with all the other problems they had defensively, stopping, run, and everything else. It ended up being a good enough pick that you were within striking distance to do that. So I give Houston and Nick Caserio a lot of credit for what they were able to do, setting themselves up in this draft beforehand. And then what they did and how they conducted themselves, especially, like I said, on day 1 there in the draft. I think they did outstanding. But yeah, like I said, my favorite pick out of all this right now is Zay Flowers to the Ravens. But I agree with you. Addison to Minnesota was another one that just kind of jumped off the page at you like, holy cow, this is a guy that not just dynasty-wise, but redraft-wise could be a factor this year. Both of these guys could be factors this year.
Absolutely, they could.
Hopefully, obviously, hopefully health-wise and everything else. Now we probably should have prefaced this whole show by saying that, listen, none of us knows jack squat about any of this right now.
Right.
Not
if we
us,
did, we'd be living in mansions to both.
Right. We don't, not us, not Mel Kiper, not Adam Rank, not Matthew Berry, not Jeff Ratcliffe. None of us knows anything right now. Nobody knows what this is going to look like. We all think, okay, from the last 3 days, we've all got, snap judgments we can make. And we've all done our research and we all think we know what's going to happen here. But obviously, you don't know how this is going to look until a year's
for me,
down the
I
road.
just look for situations that I like. And so I like the situation that Minnesota Vikings are in with Jordan Addison. So that's why I decided to go there.
Yep. No, I agree completely. All right, let's move on then. Let's jump from our favorite day 1 pick to our least favorite round 1 day 1 pick. Who went somewhere that really had you either scratching your head or that you slammed the table in disgust? Son of a Who was your least favorite round 1 pick?
My least favorite round 1 pick is Atlanta Falcons and Bijan Robinson. I like Bijan Robinson as a player. I like him a lot. I had him going to Philadelphia at 10, so I had him going in top 10 spots.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a Tyler Algiers fantasy owner, right, in Dynasty, he's worth half of what he was worth.
Yeah.
Maybe a fourth, right? You could probably trade him now for a can of tuna. So thanks a lot. I don't own him, but I could just see some guy's head just spinning completely off, and they had to pick it back up and put it back on. And so as a fantasy guy, I don't like the situation that either one of these running backs are in. Because you've got Algiers, who rushed for 1,000. He averaged 4.9 yards a carry. So I don't understand what led Atlanta to think that they had to make this move in the first place. And so now you've got 2 running backs that, as good as they may be, they're going to be, they're going to have to share some of those carries. And so I don't like this pick for Atlanta one bit.
Well, yeah, you almost stole all my thunder, but not quite all of it. I agree with you completely.
I'm glad there's a little left for you.
Nope, I agree with you completely. I like everyone else at this moment. I love Bijan Robinson as a player.
Bijan Robinson is a beast, no question.
And in a vacuum, Bijan to Atlanta is perfect fit. It's a wonderful fit for the player and the team.
For the scheme they're trying to run, that's true.
Oh, man, like you just said, he goes somewhere where we already had a young running back in Tyler Algier.
It's only his second year.
Yeah, and who's coming off a very good year and looked like he could be a guy for them.
Especially he looked better as the season went along.
Yeah.
So
it's just
shake
unfortunate.
my head at this.
And honestly, this kind of blows out to a bigger trend that happened through the whole draft. First off, I mean, coming in, we all heard that, and we've been saying it for a couple of years now, the running back position devalued in the NFL, devalued.
No question.
Not in fantasy, but in real life. They're interchangeable parts. They're just cogs in the wheel, and one breaks and you put another one in, kind of thing. And a real callous demeanor towards running backs right now. But I think, we saw 2 running backs then go in the top 12 when we were talking about, well, Bijan might be the only one and he might slip to the 20 something. There was talk of him falling all the way to
I had him going to 21 of the Chargers.
A lot of people had him fall into the 20s and either going to the Chargers or the Cowboys or somewhere, or saying that the Eagles would pick him up with their second pick on the wraparound. And no, I think that, when you get a special enough talent, they're going to find him. They're going to pick him in the NFL. But there was a larger theme, at least from the fantasy standpoint here now, of all these big name running backs that we were all excited for.
Now have somebody stealing their thunder.
They all literally went, almost every single dude.
Almost every team, including my Seahawks, now have 2 running backs.
Yeah.
It's a 2-man
in a situation
committee
where we looked like we were going to add a bunch of starting, options at the running back position. What we did is we actually lowered some of the value of quite a few already existing running backs in the NFL.
Absolutely.
You've got Bijan going to Atlanta, and we just talked about that. Jahmyr Gibbs going to the Lions. Obviously, that causes them to trade.
No sense. It makes a little bit more sense today than it did when they made that move. I know you were kidding me about, because I was like, I would have traded back every single pick of the first round. But the Detroit Lions we're talking about now could have traded back and still got that guy.
Still got both their guys. But so you got Bijan going to Atlanta.
Did anybody else have him even going in the first round?
I don't. Not many people did. Jahmyr Gibbs going to the Lions. That devalues not only him, but David Montgomery, at least in the short term. Now, again, we always got to look at things from the redraft standpoint and the fantasy and the dynasty standpoint. But in the short term, Jahmyr Gibbs to the Lions devalues him and David Montgomery. It devalued DeAndre Swift right away. They make the trade to Philadelphia.
They made a trade,
and that's a great spot
for him. That blows my mind.
It's a great spot for DeAndre Swift to land, and the rich get richer in Philadelphia.
Swift has to be happy right now because he goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, who just went to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And Detroit, they couldn't find a Super Bowl if they had a yellow brick road leading them right to it. So he's got to be happy now.
Fantasy wise now, though, you had Rashad Penny, who was going to be the guy.
Right.
And now you've got DeAndre, who could be the guy. So now they're both going to be a guy.
Right.
They've both had, now the one thing I will say about that situation is they've both been injured in their careers. They both had injuries.
Correct.
Maybe they can rotate those guys out enough that hopefully they're not taking quite as much of a pounding, either one of them. Maybe we get to keep these guys healthy all year. And if so, I mean, they've already got Kenneth Gainwell. They've still got Boston Scott. I mean, look out again for the Philadelphia Eagles. But then, Charbonnet in Seattle with Kenneth Walker.
And he's a guy that I like.
Achane in Miami. Yeah.
Maybe not, like I said, maybe not so much of my Seahawks because they had other needs to me, but, he's going to work out.
They're great players, and for the teams that got them, great on them. But it just, from the fantasy standpoint, it just killed things so much. Tyjae Spears going to Tennessee. Kendre Miller going to New Orleans. Now, Kendre Miller going to New Orleans is the one guy.
I like that move, and that's
that it might have been a boost
about after day one that I like, considering maybe Alvin Kamara and his situation.
And who the hell knows? Yeah,
who the hell knows with that? So I like that move right there, going to New Orleans.
We don't talk about defense a ton on the, I mean, there are obviously most leagues, a lot of leagues still pick a defense. Defense is still fantasy relevant.
And if you don't do that, then
you're
we
not
should
playing
talk
football.
about whether fantasy football and without defenses is not fantasy football to me.
Right. And then there's obviously IDP leagues and all of those. But, one other move that I really did not like, and we'll stick with the same team that we kind of just talked about with the Lions. I did not like them taking Campbell at 18. I thought they could have gotten him lower. I think everybody thought they could have gotten him lower. Now there is something to be said for, hey, if he's your guy, take him. But we've seen other teams just this weekend, but we've seen other teams in the past too, Bill Belichick and the like, trade back and still get their guy. And that's an instance where, they could have picked up some much needed capital, maybe even future capital.
And it's like they forgot
and still got the
worst
guy.
defense in all of football.
That's the problem. I don't mind them addressing defense in the first round at all. But I'm not thrilled with the value that they got at 18 with Campbell. Fantasy wise, it's kind of on the perimeter. But
take Sam Laporta. It's like, come on, guys.
I think there were they could have gotten better value for most of their top level picks. I think
they needed to upgrade that defense, which they didn't do.
I'm not more excited today for their defense than I was on Thursday going into this.
Be.
Offensively, I think they're going to be fun to watch.
Right.
Defense, I mean, they may have to win every game 35-32.
Right. Which, in fantasy, maybe that's, on the offensive end of the thing, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. All right, let's listen to our first ad spot here. We're gonna hear from Dan Mader, and he's gonna tell us all about the fine folks over at Manscaped. We come back on the other side. We'll talk more about some fantasy fits from round 1, and we'll move on to day 2. Talk about round 2 and 3 and what we liked from there.
Spring has sprung, and our friends at Manscaped have the best tools for some spring cleaning. They've already helped you tidy up all the nooks and crannies of your body's basement, but this year, Manscaped can help you get the perfect presentation on that beautiful face with the new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Make sure you look your best this spring by using code BELLYUP20 to get 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped.com. It's time to tame your mane with the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. The sun is peeking back out, which means you'll have to show your face in the daylight again. So use the kit to make sure your scruff looks award-winning, whether you got glorious beard flow or some smooth, sleek cheeks. The kit starts off with the Beard Hedger, a waterproof cordless trimmer with a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard. So no more messy drawers full of add-ons. It also comes with the titanium-coated T-blades that are tough on hair but smooth on your face, leading to a single-stroke efficiency that brings satisfaction one stroke at a time. The Beard Hedger is a high-tech piece of art in a travel-size package with a long-lasting battery, universal charging, and a strong motor. So what are you waiting for? Save 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUP20 at Manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUP20 at Manscaped.com. Focus on the face and use the Beard Hedger Pro Kit for the cleanest look in the game.
All right, as Dan said, get over there to Manscaped.com.
Get over there.
Use that promo code BELLYUP20. Get yourself 20% off there. If you've got unwanted hair anywhere, pretty much from here on down, Manscaped's got you covered or uncovered.
That's
as it
right.
were. So get on over there and take a look at that. All right, moving on now. We talked about our favorite round 1 picks. We talked about our least favorite round 1 picks. And this next question, this next discussion kind of ties in with some of that. But who did you think was the best fantasy fit? Now, like we said, we love Jackson Smith and Jigba going to Seattle, but fantasy wise, does it work this season or not? What was your best fantasy fit from the guys taken in round 1? Who excited you the most for this upcoming season, essentially?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I was on the call from picks 1 through 5, and Bryce Young went number 1. And according to my colleagues, he's already taken a dirt nap.
Yeah.
Essentially, right?
Right.
Especially Dan was
not thrilled.
Stab him, get it over with. But
Right.
from a fantasy perspective, at least he's going to be the starter down there.
He's the guy.
And so if you're in a 2-quarterback league, is I think, dynasty league, is a lot of us are, and I am. And if you're looking for a starter at quarterback to be maybe, not your main starter or whatever, but Bryce Young, it will be a starter. And I think CJ Stroud will be a starter. So you could look at either one of those guys to add and bring them on your team and be good with that. And so when it comes to Anthony Richardson, though, we're talking about maybe a guy, because I'm not big on his landing spot at all. And so if you're in a situation where you need a starter, those two guys work for me. I think Anthony Richardson could be the starter there, but I don't like him as a starter just yet. I don't like that at all. So if he goes out and his career could be, there's all kinds of possibilities with this guy, but he could have his career ruined before it even gets started. To me, I would like to see him sitting back and be more like Will Levis. He's in a perfect spot to me. We could talk about that a little bit later, but as a fantasy guy, if I don't need a quarterback, maybe I could put somebody like I had Jordan Love on my practice squad for 2-3 years now.
Right.
I could put Will Levis on my taxi squad and live with that, and everything would be fine because he could develop. I like his spot, even though he was, it was sad seeing him sitting in that out there the whole first day, Thursday night.
And then and his girlfriend next to him, and they were all dressed up and thought
and he looked nice.
That's always tough to see. It's always tough to see.
So Tennessee bypassed him. That's, we could have talked about that, as being one of the moves that I liked that they didn't do in that first round. They got him in the second. I like that. I like his spot. I like that if you're not in a team that needs an immediate quarterback answer, that's the guy that I'm looking for to draft in my dynasty league.
All right. I'm actually going to counterpoint you there.
Okay.
Counter me. I like Anthony Richardson to the Colts at number 4 there. I like the fact that he's going to Shane Steichen's offense.
Okay.
And Shane Steichen coming from the Eagles, he has worked with a mobile quarterback. And for all the running around that Jalen Hurts does, and for as mobile a quarterback as he is, he really improved a ton as a passer in terms of the pro game. And that's why he's a starter now. That's why they felt comfortable moving forward with him. You can find there are a ton of guys that you can sign at the quarterback position who can run around, but you have to be able to pass. And Jalen Hurts has improved and made himself into a very good passer, especially in that offensive scheme that they were using in. Now,
and
Anthony Richardson,
example of what I'm talking about, a guy who was able to develop.
Yeah, and Josh Allen, the same thing.
He wasn't that his first year.
The big knock on Josh Allen coming into the league was his accuracy. He has literally improved that every single season he's been in the pros until now. He's a premier starting quarterback, not just because he can run through everyone to the end zone, but because he can throw the ball all over the field right where he wants to go, and he's got weapons to throw to. Now, Anthony Richardson, of course, Anthony Richardson could be the next Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell or whatever, or he could turn out to be the next Jalen Hurts type. We obviously don't know, and we've only got 13 starts in college to judge on. But in terms of the fit, going to the Colts, knowing that he has that opportunity, I think he plays right away. I think Gardner Minshew is there for Minshew obviously comes from Philadelphia as well. He already knows that scheme. They've got themselves safeguarded there, but he can also help teach that scheme to Anthony Richardson. Richardson has somebody to watch who's been in that scheme now and knows that. I think they've done a good job there of fitting a guy that works with what they want to do to where they were in the draft. When you're that high in the draft, you almost can't pass up the opportunity to take a possible franchise quarterback. I think he plays right away. Not everybody agrees with that. Obviously, you don't agree with that. I think he plays right away.
My issue is I think he's going to play right away, and I don't think that's the best thing for him. That's my concern.
And there is risk with that. We've seen, almost every guy that the Browns have taken since they came back into the damned league has had that exact scenario happen where they've thrown him in too early and he gets blown apart. Johnny Manziel got thrown in really early. Obviously, Baker was pushed into playing early. And honestly, from Baker's standpoint, at least year one, Baker pulled it off. And I'll argue that with anybody.
The playoffs. But after
that. But Deshaun Kaiser and we can go on and on, right?
Yeah. We could go back to 1999.
I'm not very tall, but there's a list longer than I am tall of Cleveland quarterbacks that they've kind of run through the meat grinder and ruined. I hope that doesn't happen with Anthony Richardson, but I do like the fit in terms of the scheme, in terms of Shane Steichen's offense, in terms of the need that they had there. And I love him from a dynasty standpoint. If I have to draft a quarterback, if I'm twisting my arm behind my back for a quarterback this year in redraft, I'm not taking Anthony Richardson out of the rookie quarterbacks. But in dynasty, he's the one that I want to take my shot with because of his rushing upside and the ceiling that's there. That's why I have him ranked as high as I do in terms of the fit and where I want to take him. In dynasty, especially in super flex in dynasty, I want him all day long over the other two because it's an upshot taking my shot and not just playing the same game that everybody else is playing.
See, that's why I chug in there and I'm taking Will Levis.
Mm-hmm. No, and I'm
taking my shot, and a guy that I think he's going to be, he could be the best. He could be the best one out of all these four. I'm not saying he is.
It's got the arm,
but he could be. And if he gets a year to sit behind Ryan Tannehill and then start him, I'm willing to take that shot with him.
Right. He can sit behind Ryan Tannehill for a year or two.
Thing about this is they're similar quarterbacks, so they won't have to change their offense once he does step on that field.
They have a real contrast there now. I think their backup quarterback position between Malik Willis and
Malik
Will
Willis,
Levis.
He may as well not even pack his bags and go to Tennessee. He
definitely was not ready last season. I think they should have carried him as a third. I think they should have signed another backup quarterback and given Malik Willis some time to develop there. But Will Levis can go there. He can sit behind Tannehill for a year or two, probably. Same way he sat behind Green Bay's third string quarterback, now Sean Clifford at Penn State for 2 years, but we won't talk about that. One of the other fantasy fits that I did like, and I brought him up as not liking the fantasy. I mean, I don't like it from the standpoint of this coming season, but going forward, I really did like Jackson Smith and Jigba to the Seahawks. I loved that for a fit. I think that he's Tyler Lockett after Tyler Lockett's no longer with you. You meaning because you're a Seahawks fan, but Tyler Lockett is in his 30s, and not everybody plays forever.
Nope, he keeps producing, but at some point the faucet gets turned off, and while you still have some water coming out of this.
This isn't the Russell Wilson rookie contract Seahawks. This is you're paying money to your to DK. You're paying money to your quarterback now.
If you talk about a guy who's the happiest out of this draft, wasn't even in it. I'm talking about Geno Smith.
You're right. He's got a ton more weapons to work with. Yeah, I mean, I liked what Seattle did. We talk about that later too. Obviously, you follow him closer than I do, but I really do like the fit there, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now he probably won't see he'll see the field probably this season, but not enough to make him like a big fantasy factor.
No,
a big fantasy
not
factor
this year. So as we said, if you can wait and develop, there you
dynasty,
go.
Snatch him up,
grab him, and especially since a lot of teams play 2 tight end sets. That is not the Seahawks. It's like they might as well not even have a tight end over there.
Poor Noah Fant.
Yeah, poor Noah Fant. Goes up there and he's just a dude.
And one other guy that we talked about then, we've both brought him up already. He was our answer to the number one question of the day, Bijan Robinson. And you mentioned it, the idea of the scheme fit for him. how he can fit into that offense. I love the fit there fantasy wise. It depresses me from the standpoint of, we had a fantasy starter type guy in Tyler Algier. Bijan's going to go in there. He's going to Bijan, and
Right.
Tyler Algier, what happens to him? I mean, do they become D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart from the Panthers from 10 years ago? Or does Tyler Algier disappear now and we never hear from him again? I hope that's not the case. The kid's got talent.
That's the case. He won't disappear, but
and he's not going to hold me back from drafting Robinson.
600 yards from scrimmage, he'll be doing good.
That's a big year for him at this point.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And he had 1,035 a year ago, and that's out the window now.
Jahmyr Gibbs is enough of a worry for me in Detroit that I'm going to be discounting Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I probably won't end up with a lot of them in my redraft formats because I'll have to pay too high a price for what I think I'm going to get out of either one of them. I love them both as players. I like them in Detroit.
Right. And they're not even differential, if that's a word, enough players to be able to sit here and say what their roles are going to be.
This is not DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, where you had one guy that could be and was the hammer and the other guy who was clearly the passing running back. And Jamal Williams, I've argued this before. I'll keep arguing it down in New Orleans as well. Jamal Williams is not a poor pass catching running back. It's just that DeAndre Swift is DeAndre Swift. You want to get him the ball in space. The best way to do that, especially in their offense, is to throw it to him. But I love what Bijan Robinson, can do for the Atlanta Falcons. It saddens me as a fantasy guy who wanted to see Tyler Algier be another starting running back. I don't have any shares of him in Dynasty, so I
don't either, which I am certainly glad of today.
But I may end up with a share or two of Bijan Robinson. I've got a couple of high picks off some orphans that I picked up.
You just have to go into that with kind of tapered expectations, just based on.
It's going to be a situation we have to monitor. It's not something we can jump on right away. All right, so moving on here now. We've talked about round one pretty thoroughly. Let's move on to day two. What was your favorite move on day two from either round two or round three? Your absolute favorite move. Go.
All right. Well, my favorite move has absolutely nothing to do with fantasy, but that's Joey Porter going to the Steelers.
Hey, yeah. The first pick of the day.
He was one of the guys that I had high up there as one of my quarterbacks. Yeah. And so, that whole storyline, his father and all that. I kind of think that if the Seahawks had known that Joey Porter might have hung around that long, might have made a different decision with that number 5 pick. But that's another, topic for another day. But I like that fit down there in Pittsburgh a whole lot. So that helps their defense, and the story's just going to write itself.
Right.
It's already writing itself. And so the fact that he went in the second round was a surprise to me, but I like him in Pittsburgh a whole lot.
Yeah, it's definitely a Hallmark movie channel script that dad played for them. Not only does the son get to play for them, but he fits a position of need. He's good enough that he's not a question at the level he was taken at. You don't question Joey Porter as the first pick in the second round, regardless of who takes him, right? But then the fact that it was the Steelers, the fact that the Steelers have a need at cornerback too. They didn't just take him for a sentimental feel-good story. They didn't reach on him. This is a perfect. This is like the stars and the planets and everything else in the sky aligned perfectly for this pick to happen. And it's like you said, it's a beautiful story. It's a great story. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do there. They're going to need him. They're going to need a defense in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh, not having a good defense is one of the, it's a sad sight.
It's been one of the saddest things of the last 2-3 years.
Even though I'm not a Steeler fan, can't be.
No.
But You got to see a strong defense in Pittsburgh. You just
being a secondary Cleveland fan, I can't like Pittsburgh, but but they're going to need the defense with what Cincinnati can do, with with all the weapons we talked about in Baltimore, we think they're capable of. And if Deshaun Watson even gets back to 80% of what Deshaun Watson was, Cleveland can be dangerous too. They've got a good offensive line. They've got some offensive weapons. They still have Nick Chubb back there. That could be, it could be, how weird would that be to see the AFC North become like this aerial assault type division as opposed to the ground and pound? We always think of both of the Norths.
And the Steeler linebacker era, and they're going to, knock your teeth clean out of your head and all that.
Yeah, no, and now they're now bombing away. Yeah, it's a weird transition to make, but Joey Porter, he's a great story there. I agree with that. I like that move. On a fantasy though, fantasy perspective, you have to like Mr. Michael Mayer going to the Las Vegas Raiders. All right. Mm-hmm. He goes over there right after Sam Laporta. I think that's going to be an interesting situation to watch. But Meyer to Las Vegas. Jimmy G knows how to throw to the tight end. Yeah, and as we talked, Foster Moreau and all his health issues and everything else. And so I like that a whole lot. And he went in the second round, but he might have the best opportunity out of all these tight ends we could bring up for success right out of the bat. They lose, they give away Darren Waller, but
Darren Waller.
There is definitely there is a position available for him if he can take the bull by the horns,
which I think he can.
They brought in OJ Howard. They lost both Waller and Foster Moreau, but they've got a coach, McDaniel. We know that he likes to be able to use two tight ends if he has them, but they bring in Austin Hooper and OJ Howard as vets. Neither one of those guys.
If I don't fall over Austin Hooper,
raises my blood pressure at all. But they're both capable players. OJ Howard actually can be a bit of a weapon. Week 1 last year with a brand new team, he scored 2 touchdowns in Houston after he was thrown to the curb by the Buffalo Bills. The guy can play some football. OJ Howard's one of those guys who never really quite matched up with what we hoped he would be and thought he would be, but he's a fine player to have in the league. And the same thing with Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper is a fine player to have on your real life football team. He's not going to move the needle fantasy wise. Michael Mayer, on the other hand, could be a guy that could do both. We know he's a good blocker. He's just a solid all around.
He went
player.
to Notre Dame, so that means he's a good blocker. By definition.
He's a good all around football player. Which could get him on the field very early, and they have the need there at the position. I agree. And you brought up a nice key component to that as well. We've seen Jimmy Garoppolo and how, with tight ends, we've seen him with a good tight end, and we've seen what he likes to do with it. And again, speaking of Josh McDaniels, Jimmy Garoppolo has history with him as well from their days way back in New England. So I like that fit as well. I agree with you there. I'm kind of like you. My favorite move is kind of fantasy tangential, but Osiris Torrance at the end of the second round. I was going
to bring him up.
Going to Buffalo.
Ahead. I like what you're saying already.
Son of a gun. You talk about, they got
at the Buffalo Bills. What a great selection that is.
Man, you talk about an absolute mountain of a man, a complete road grader who can do everything in the that you want from an offensive lineman. And now they get to plug him in on a team that's already a player or two away from a Super Bowl, right?
And we saw Josh Allen running around in the backfield way too much a year ago.
I think he's going to be a big help for them. They're kind of not starting all the way over at running back, but they bring in Damian Harris, Zach Moss. They got rid of last year. Now Devin Singletary's out. But Damian Harris is a guy who we've seen be a good running back as well in New England, across the division from them. Bringing in Osiris Torrance, I think, was a master stroke for them, and I'm really excited to see him develop in that offensive line. But like you said, if I want to pick a fantasy move that I like, my favorite day 2 move, I really did like the Lions being able to grab Hendon Hooker with the 5th pick in the 3rd round.
I like that as well, especially if he can be healthy.
Exactly the same things that you were kind of saying about Will Levis, about letting him be able to develop behind a guy for a year or two. I agree with.
Great landing spot for him. I don't like that they made that selection, because where's your defense once again?
Right.
But since they did it, I like it. I like the landing spot a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, coming off of the injury, there should not be, and hopefully there's not a need, or they don't feel a need to rush him to get him onto the field.
Goff there. What are you rushing him for?
Right. Then that's the point. I mean, they spent all offseason, Dan Campbell specifically, they spent all offseason kind of endorsing Jared Goff as their guy and that they love what he does. But now you've got the ability to have that future guy. And I mean, Hendon Hooker, he's only 3 years younger than Jared Goff. It's not like either one of them is an old man. And I know that people were jumping on Hendon Hooker's age, but quarterback is a position where guys can play a little bit longer. It's not running back where your average
ex guy, right? 39 years old and still throwing it.
Right. Still tossing it around. You can play a long time in this league as a quarterback if you're good enough. And Hendon Hooker, based on what we saw from him in college, he looks good enough. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of debate about whether he looks good enough to, be a prospect in this league and play in this league. It's just, how does he adjust now? How does he fit into what Detroit wants? And when does he get his shot? Hopefully he can stay healthy. But that was my answer there on that. Let's go ahead. We're going to take our second break here. We come back on the other side. We're going to look at day 3. We're going to look at day 3 and see, is there anybody from the players that went from rounds 4 through 7, who do we think is going to be an impact player from day 3? But first off, let's listen to this from our good friend Ryan and SeatGeek.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, but you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
$20 off your first purchase on tickets using that sports code BellyUpSports. Wow. Hey, get over there. Do that too. SeatGeek. Try it out. So day 3, day 3, there's a ton of guys that go, and sometimes we tend to discount these guys that go late, but we saw last year how dangerous that can be when we saw literally the last guy taken become maybe the most important player in the whole league over the second half of the season in Brock Purdy. And had he not been hurt in that championship game, who knows how it shakes out. The guy, I mean, he won them. I don't know. They won their last like 12 games before that fantasy champion, or before the NFC championship game. So if he doesn't get hurt, what are we talking about here? And he was Mr. Irrelevant, the last guy taken. So you can't, and obviously Tom Brady picked 199. I mean, we know that guys can make an impact from these positions. Just from my standpoint, from my home team, Donald Driver was a 7th round pick. He was a leading receiver in Packer history for a time. So on day 3, who are a couple of guys that you think have an opportunity to make an immediate fantasy impact or will be eventually fantasy impactful on day 3?
Well, before I get into that, I'd like to get your take, because you're a Green Bay guy, obviously. And so they take the tight end 2nd round and then turn right around and take another tight end. So
Tucker Kraft. Yep.
So what's your take on have, because I needed a tight end, obviously, but now they've got 2. And so, what was the thinking about them taking 2 tight ends?
I was sad. In fact, put out a tweet that said, the longer Green Bay goes without taking a tight end, the better I feel about Josiah DeGuara. I have some DeGuara shares in fantasy. Like you said, one of those guys I was kind of stashing on my taxi squad type thing, because I knew that Mercedes Lewis couldn't play until he was 93, and that Tunyon was most likely gone, especially when Rodgers was gone. So I knew they were going to have a need at tight end there. I like what DeGuara can do, but I think what this does, bringing in Luke Musgrave, who could turn into the best receiving tight end of the whole draft, who could, if he's healthy. I like having him there. You bring in Tucker Kraft, another guy who's really athletic. I would love to see
tight
these
end that I liked a lot going into this draft.
Yeah, both guys have decent size. Both guys are really athletic. That could be really fun to see them on the field at the same time. I think 12 personnel in Green Bay looks a heck of a lot better, honestly, today than it did last season. I don't mind them jumping on it that quickly. They needed pass catchers. They needed to surround Jordan Love with weapons. And now they've got 2 shots at the well. They've got at least 2 shots at the well to see if they can find him a dynamic starting tight end. And if nothing else, what it also does then is it allows Josiah DeGuara, if they keep him around, he doesn't have to play so much that tight end role. He can move to much more that H-back, more like what Chris Cooley used to do in Washington. And I'm going back a little bit, but more that H-back type role, kind of like Kyle Juszczyk in San Francisco, sometimes kind of a fullback, but receives a lot and can kind of move around the formation. That allows them to, if they want to, do that kind of thing with Josiah DeGuara. So I really like the fact that they took both of those guys. I'm excited about it. And I'm not just trying to talk myself into that, because there have been plenty of times, and this is the first time, like I said, in quite a while, where we came out of a draft and I was kind of excited to see what was going to happen. Some of that is probably just because I hope that they're helping out Jordan Love. I'm not excited about losing 3 decades of Hall of Fame quarterback play, but I don't mind that move. But was there a day 3 guy? Back to the original question.
Okay.
Now that you know how I feel about that.
There's a couple of guys that intrigue me in fantasy. Okay. Certainly not anywhere close this year.
Yeah.
Any of that. And there are 2 quarterbacks. Okay. One is Jake Hayner from Fresno State going to the New Orleans Saints.
Very good landing spot for him.
Very good landing spot for him. He's not going to be anywhere near the field for quite, because they just signed their guy. So he could sit back over there and learn things. We know Fresno State, they know how to play offense at Fresno State.
Right.
So I like that landing spot for him. And we talked about older quarterbacks just a minute ago. And so that's Stetson Bennett, all right, going to the Rams.
Yep.
Now, I realize that he's probably, a year younger, seems like, than Matthew Stafford, okay? But he's a guy who we know he's a winner. He's a 2-time national champion, and he's got a situation, if Matthew Stafford could stay healthy this year,
right,
he'll sit back over there, even though he's, 26, whatever it is, 25, 26.
Yeah.
And so he's a guy that can sit back over there and learn, and he could be someone that could be moved into that starting spot in a couple of years and be productive.
Right. Both of those guys are sitting in good spots where they come into the league, not necessarily universally regarded as ready for the league.
No.
But NFL caliber guys that were expected to be drafted, taken, and they both land in good spots. Well, yeah, they're not sitting behind. We're not bringing them in behind Joe Burrow, where they're not going to play forever because he's going to be the guy. You've got a couple of older quarterbacks, and especially in the case of Matthew Stafford with his recent injury history, how long is he for the league? We don't know. I agree with you. Both of those guys land in good spots there. the guy who I want to bring up here, I've got three guys that I kind of wanted to mention here. I got a pair of running backs, and a receiver that I'm kind of adding onto this list against my better judgment, but it'll make for some talk. Rashawn Johnson, round 4, pick 13 to the Bears.
I considered talking about him. So
yeah. Now, the Bears, Khalil Herbert, coming, at the beginning of the season, right after the 2022 season ended, we all kind of looked at it and said, okay, David Montgomery's a free agent. He'll probably sign elsewhere. It's Khalil Herbert's time, right? And I was a guy that was beating the drum for Khalil Herbert last year. In fact, I put out a tweet. I took some heat for it a little bit, but I said the idea of them playing David Montgomery over Khalil Herbert with how productive Khalil Herbert was every time he got the ball, it was borderline criminal negligence, right? Now, I like I said, I took some flack for that, but I think we all thought this is Khalil Herbert's time. But then they go out and they bring in Deontay Foreman, and Deontay Foreman maybe isn't the flashy, splashy name that everybody wants.
But he kept the Carolina running game afloat.
He kept the Carolina running game afloat after they traded maybe the best back or best all around offensive weapon in football away in Christian McCaffrey. But the year before that, he kept the flipping Tennessee running game afloat when Derrick Henry went down. This is a guy that is a solid running back and a solid all-around player in this league. So they bring him in, and now we've got the same kind of situation that we've had the last several years in Chicago, where we've got Khalil Herbert and another guy who can kind of do everything. But I like Rashawn Johnson coming in there. Foreman is probably not a long-term signing. Khalil Herbert is probably not very long for that team either. I believe Herbert's 27. He's not young for a running back. He doesn't have the mileage on him some running backs do at that age. But Rashawn Johnson coming in there, I think he fits in well with what they do, and I think that he's got a shot to be, if not this year, I would grab him late second, mid third. I would grab him there. I would grab him in dynasty drafts if you're needy at the running back position. He's one of those running backs you can probably get in your rookie draft, where if you're a rebuilding team and you don't want to be spending high picks on running backs and you're just looking for guys to take a shot on, he's a guy that you might be able to grab now. And by the time you're ready to compete in 2 years, he's ready to hit the field and be the starter. I like Chase Brown to the Bengals with the 29th pick in the 5th round. Chase Brown, not just because we share a similar name.
Okay.
Joe Mixon has not been efficient the last couple of years. Fantasy-wise, we've gotten our points out of him, but he has not been efficient. His yards per carry have tanked the last couple of years. And he's getting older. And then you throw in all of the off-field, what I want to call it, that comes along with him. We saw it before the draft with him. He was a character issue coming into the draft. And then now we've got these off-season reports that right around the time that they're in the playoffs trying to make the Super Bowl, this dude's got gun problems with a neighbor and all kinds of other. It's unfortunate because Joe Mixon is a talented player. And this is a team that has aspirations. This is a team that has made a Super Bowl and can make it back there again and has all the pieces that they want other than him. And so Chase Brown is a guy that if they move on from Mixon this year, if they move on from him next year, Chase Brown's a guy who there's a starting spot available in front of him. Who's he competing with? Chris Evans? Chris Evans, there's a reason Chris Evans hasn't cracked that lineup already anyway, right? Travion Williams. Travion Williams would already be a player if he was a player, right? These guys are good enough to be on NFL rosters. They're not good enough to be the starting running back for a Super Bowl contender. And so Chase Brown has a wonderful opportunity in front of him if he takes a hold of it. And then the other guy, like I said, that I'm afraid of putting on this list because of the confluence of his situation, Kayshon Boutte to the Patriots. Listen, I've written about it. I've talked about it. I've joked about it. I've tweeted about it. Bill Belichick drafting wide receivers is like, it's like his kryptonite, literally. I mean, he just, all of his football knowledge goes out the window, and he's just a drooling, staggering idiot when it comes to drafting wide receivers. But there is a need in Patriot land for a wide receiver. They bring in Juju Smith-Schuster. They still have, for whatever reason, Devontae Parker. They still have Kendrick Bourne. They have cousin Tyquan Thornton, no relation actually, who's young and showed some promise, but not, I mean, didn't flash anything that made you sit back and say, whoa. Now, the one problem, at least for this coming season, is that Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be their slot receiver. He's going to be the guy that's starting in that slot position. They'll put Parker and probably Bourne on the outside. Maybe Thornton cracks that. Who knows? But Boutte is a slot receiver as well, and he's not going to get a ton of time this season. But they're not locked into Juju Smith-Schuster for the long term. They do have a need there for wide receiver play. So we'll see. He's got an opportunity down the line. Another guy that I would take a late shot on in fantasy dynasty drafts there. All right. We're going to wrap it up here. We're going to,
Well, I think we'd be remiss.
Well, no, go ahead.
If we didn't mention the fact that last week, as I recall, you mentioned the San Francisco 49ers, okay?
Yeah.
Needing to draft a kicker. And what did San Francisco 49ers, in fact, do?
Yeah, I didn't want to rub that in.
A kicker.
I didn't want to rub that in on Friday night with Dan. After the show, after the show, we kind of all stuck around and kind of, wrapped things up. Dan was just about beside himself. Dan Mader, for those of you who watch Belly Up Fantasy Live here and are Belly Up Fantasy Sports fans, Dan Mader from MD's Fantasy Show, great show, great host, knows a ton about football, and he's a 49er fan, and he was just about
that was a rough gig
ready to
on him with
collapse.
I'm a Seattle guy, so that was a
he
rough
was
gig
not
right there.
thrilled with their selection of Jake Moody out of Michigan for the kicker spot. But now they have a competition the same way the Packers have a competition. Now the Packers take Anders Carlson, Daniel Carlson, Pro Bowler from Las Vegas. Daniel Carlson's younger brother, Anders, is now fighting for the kicking job in Green Bay, but we didn't take him in the third round.
Okay. So that's worthy pointing out that they took him in the third round, but
that was one of my big takeaways.
You mentioned the player, you mentioned the team that could draft him in the same sentence. So, I just thought, well, I'd give you a chance to, praise yourself.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me my flowers. I appreciate that. What have you got coming up here, Kevin? What can we expect from you here coming up this week and going forward? Where can we find you?
Well, tonight, Vince and I, as always, have our the fantasy baseball show. And so we have a guest from the Belly Up ranks. Eric Katz is going to be on with us tonight, talking some general baseball, but we'll be certainly talking about some fantasy. Who do we have as our MVP pitcher and hitter of the first 4 weeks? We'll be talking about that. Who our drops, holds, and ads and all, like we normally do. And I had just started writing an article about the San Diego Padres hitters. Is it time to panic? And they go ahead and put 16 runs on the board yesterday.
That was a game. What a game they showed them down in Mexico. I don't know if it was the light air.
Better place to hit than Colorado.
The elevation and is literally sky high.
So, hopefully they don't put 32 runs on the board today and kill my article entirely.
Listen, I started Joe Musgrove yesterday, so I took it on the chin in that game.
So that's
excellent.
what I got going on this week. And you can always get on Twitter, Kevin62, WILSEA. And there we have it.
All right. And like he said, you can find me on Twitter, STT Chase FFB. Give him my thoughts there. I will be I'll be on Twitter, and I'll have some articles coming out this week as well, talking about the new rookies. And now that we have landing spots, now we can start looking at rookie drafts. I don't understand these people who do rookie drafts before the NFL
one
draft.
by Thursday, okay? Can we at least hold off
right
for a week? Can we do
that? I'll be looking forward to those though, and giving some takes on those and who I think, some of the same kind of stuff we talked about today, but a little more in depth on who do I think we should be targeting in some fantasy drafts. Where do we think they're going to be going? But that's going to do it for us here on Belly Up Fantasy Live. We thank you guys all for being with us, and we will be back here same time, same channel next week. Until then, Slanjava.
Have a good